I've never been the kind of guy who expects the world to stop spinning just for me. Life's been good enough, steady job, decent house, a family that gets by. But turning 40? That felt different. For weeks, Brielle kept dropping these little hints, her voice all playful and mysterious, saying, "Just wait, Julian. Something big is coming." I'd catch her smiling at me over breakfast, her brown eyes sparkling like she was hiding a secret she couldn't wait to spill. Skylar, my 19-year-old daughter, would nudge me at the dinner table and ask weird questions like, "Dad, what's your favorite cake flavor?" Maddox, my 21-year-old son, even checked my work schedule, asking what days I'd be off. I'm a construction supervisor, so my hours are long, but I started thinking maybe they were planning something. A surprise party, maybe? A nice dinner out? I didn't need much, just a little sign they cared. I let myself hope, you know? I let that tiny spark grow in my chest as my birthday got closer. I'd come home from work, tired and dusty, picturing balloons or a happy birthday banner taped to the living room wall. So, on the big day, March 29th, 2025, I pulled my truck into the driveway, my heart beating a little faster than usual. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky orange, and I sat there for a second, gripping the steering wheel, telling myself not to get too excited. I grabbed my lunchbox and stepped out, the gravel crunching under my boots as I walked up to the front door. I turned the key, pushed it open, and nothing. The house was dark, silent, empty. No warm smell of food hit me. No laughter or footsteps rushing to greet me. The living room stretched out in front of me, bare, no decorations, no candles, no nothing. I flicked on the light, half expecting someone to jump out and yell, "Surprise." But the switch just buzzed, and the bulb hummed to life, showing me the truth. The couch sat there, same as always. The TV was off. The kitchen counter was clean. No cake, no plates, no mess of a party being prepped. I dropped my lunchbox on the table, the thud echoing in the quiet, and stood there, staring at the empty space where my family should have been. My phone stayed silent in my pocket. No texts, no calls, no, "Hey, we're running late." I walked through the house, my work boots leaving faint dirt marks on the hardwood. Upstairs, the beds were made. Skylar's room smelled like her lavender spray, but her backpack was gone. Maddox's sneakers weren't by the door. Brielle's purse, the one she always leaves on the hall table, wasn't there. I checked the garage, her car was missing. My stomach twisted, heavy and sour, like I'd swallowed a rock. I told myself maybe they were out getting something last minute. Maybe they'd pull in any second, headlights flashing, full of apologies and excuses. I sat on the couch, still in my dusty jacket, and waited. 5 minutes turned into 10. 10 turned into 30. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it ever had before, each second slicing into that dumb hope I'd been carrying. I leaned back, rubbed my face, and felt the weight of 40 years settle on me. Not the milestone I'd imagined, but something else. Something cold. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, popped it open, and took a long sip, the bitter taste matching the ache starting to spread in my chest. They weren't coming. I knew it then, deep down, even if I didn't want to admit it. I'd spent weeks building up this moment in my head, picturing their faces, their voices, some kind of celebration to mark me hitting the big 4-0. But the house stayed quiet, and that silence told me everything. I wasn't worth the effort. Not to them. I set the beer down, my hand shaking just a little, and stared at the blank TV screen. My reflection staring back, tired eyes, gray creeping into my beard, a guy who thought he mattered. 40 years old, and this was it. An empty house, a warm beer, and a family that didn't even leave a note. I didn't know what hurt more, the fact they forgot or the fact I'd let myself believe they wouldn't. Either way, I wasn't moving from that couch. Not yet. I'd wait a little longer, just in case. But that spark? It was gone. Snuffed out by the dark, quiet truth of my birthday night. 3 hours after I sat down on that couch, the beer was warm in my hand, and the house was still as empty as a ghost town. I'd been staring at the wall, trying to figure out what I did wrong, why nobody bothered to even call. My phone sat on the coffee table, screen black, mocking me with its silence. I checked it a dozen times, nothing. No missed calls, no texts, just the same old lock screen of me and Brielle from last summer, smiling at some barbecue. I didn't want to feel sorry for myself, but damn, it was hard not to. 40 years old, and this was my big day? I grabbed my phone again, more out of habit than hope, and opened Instagram. I don't usually scroll much, too many ads and fake smiles, but something told me to look. And there it was, staring me in the face like a punch to the gut. A photo of Brielle, Skylar, Maddox, and her parents, Greg and Rochelle, all grinning on a beach. White sand stretched out behind them, waves crashing in, the sun setting all golden and perfect. Brielle had a cocktail in her hand, her sunglasses pushed up on her head, laughing like she didn't have a care in the world. Skylar was splashing in the water, her hair wet and wild. Maddox stood there, shirt off, holding a beer, smirking at the camera. Greg and Rochelle were lounging in chairs, looking smug as ever. The caption under Maddox's post hit me like a brick. "He won't even notice we're gone, LOL." I read it again, then a third time, just to make sure I wasn't seeing things. My own son wrote that. My family, my whole damn family, was at some fancy resort, living it up, while I sat here in the dark. And they thought it was funny. I scrolled through more posts. Skylar had a story up, her sipping a drink with a little umbrella, tagging some place called Paradise Cove Resort. Brielle posted a selfie with Rochelle, captioned, "Family time is the best time. Family time. Without me." I dropped the phone on the couch like it burned me and stood up, my legs shaky. My chest felt tight, like someone was squeezing it, and my hands clenched into fists. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of whiskey from the cabinet, the good stuff Brielle got me for Christmas, and poured a glass. No ice, no mixer, just straight. I took a big gulp, the burn sliding down my throat, and leaned against the counter, staring at the floor. They didn't forget. That's what got me. This wasn't some accident, some last-minute thing where they meant to call but didn't. They planned this. They packed bags, got on a plane, and left me behind, laughing about it like I was some joke. I pictured them at the airport, checking in, probably saying stuff like, "Oh, Julian's fine, he's always working anyway." I took another sip, slower this time, letting it sit on my tongue. The house felt bigger than ever, the silence pressing in from every corner. I walked back to the couch, whiskey in hand, and picked up the phone again. I zoomed in on the photo, Maddox's stupid grin, Skylar's carefree wave, Brielle's easy laugh. They looked happy, happier than they ever did here with me. I set the glass down and rubbed my eyes, feeling the sting of something I wouldn't call tears, not yet. I wanted to text them. I wanted to call and yell, "What the hell is this? It's my birthday." But I didn't. What would I even say? Come home? Explain? They just laugh more, or worse, feel sorry for me. I didn't want their pity. I didn't want their excuses. I scrolled back to Maddox's caption, "He won't even notice we're gone, LOL," and it played over and over in my head like a bad song. He was wrong, though. I noticed. I noticed every second of it. The whiskey bottle sat there, half empty now, and I poured another glass, my hands steadier this time. I wasn't mad, not the loud, yelling kind of mad. It was quieter, deeper, like a fire starting low in my gut. They thought I wouldn't care. They thought I'd just shrug and go to bed like nothing happened. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I took a sip, leaned back, and let the silence wrap around me. They were wrong about me, and I'd make sure they knew it. Not tonight, though. Tonight, I'd sit here, drink my whiskey, and let that fire grow. Tomorrow? That was another story. The whiskey bottle was nearly empty by the time I decided sitting around feeling sorry for myself wasn't enough. It was past midnight, my birthday officially over, and the house still echoed with that hollow silence. I wasn't drunk, not really, just buzzed enough to feel the edges of my anger sharpen. Maddox's caption kept bouncing around in my head. "He won't even notice we're gone, LOL." They thought I was blind, some dumb workhorse who'd just keep plodding along, too busy or too stupid to see what they were doing. But I saw it all now, clear as day, and I wasn't going to let it slide. I grabbed my laptop from the coffee table, flipped it open, and started digging. First, I went back to Instagram, saving every post and story they'd put up, Brielle's selfies, Skylar's beach videos, Maddox's smug little updates. I took screenshots, noting the timestamps. They'd been gone at least 2 days, maybe more, based on the resort's check-in pics. Then I pulled up our joint bank account online. I'm the one who usually handles the bills, keeps the numbers straight, so I knew exactly where to look. My stomach dropped when I saw it. A $3,800 withdrawal, dated 3 days ago. Cash, not a card swipe, sneaky, like they didn't want a trail. I leaned back, rubbing my jaw, thinking about how I'd just given Maddox the same amount last month for a deposit on his new apartment. He'd hugged me, said, "Thanks, Dad, you're the best." I'd felt good about it, proud even. Now, it looked like that money funded their little getaway. I kept scrolling through the bank records, my fingers moving faster as the pieces clicked together. There were small charges too, gas, a coffee shop near the airport, but nothing big enough to explain a resort trip. That's when I remembered Brielle's emergency credit card, the one she said was for unexpected stuff like car repairs. She kept the statements in a drawer in our bedroom, tucked under some old tax files like I'd never bothered to check. I got up, the whiskey buzzing in my veins, and headed upstairs. The drawer squeaked as I pulled it open, and there it was, a stack of envelopes from a card I didn't even have the number for. I ripped one open, dated last month, and started reading. My eyes widened as the charges piled up. $1,200 at a spa, $800 at some fancy clothing store, $450 for lunch with Rochelle at a place I'd never even heard of. Month after month, it was the same, thousands racked up on stuff she never mentioned. The latest statement, unopened, showed new charges for $1,500 at Paradise Cove Resort, plus a couple hundred more for extras. $92,000 total, spread over a year. I dropped the papers on the bed, my hands shaking, not from the whiskey, but from the weight of it all. This wasn't just a birthday snub. This was a whole secret life. I went back downstairs, grabbed a notebook, and started writing it all down. Dates, amounts, everything. The reliable Julian Hartley, the guy who clocked in early and stayed late, who paid the mortgage and fixed the leaks, had been erased. They'd turned me into a walking ATM, a shadow they could step over while they sipped cocktails and laughed. I poured the last of the whiskey, staring at my messy handwriting, the numbers glaring back at me. I didn't cry. I'm not the crying type, but my throat felt tight, like I couldn't swallow right. I thought about the years I'd spent building this life, the overtime I worked so Skylar could go to college, the weekends I gave up to keep us afloat. And for what? So they could jet off and mock me? I flipped the notebook shut and leaned back, the couch creaking under me. The anger wasn't loud anymore. It was cold, steady, like a river carving through rock. I wasn't going to yell or smash things. That's not who I am. But I was done being invisible. I'd been the guy who kept quiet, who let things slide, who trusted too much. Not anymore. I took a slow sip of whiskey, letting it burn, and made a promise to myself right there in the dark. They'd remember me, not the old Julian, the one they walked all over, but this one, the forgotten one, the one who'd been watching all along. And I'd start by making sure they couldn't hide from what they'd done. Not from me. Not ever again. 2 days after my birthday, I woke up to the same quiet house, the same empty feeling sitting heavy in my chest. The whiskey bottle was still on the counter, a reminder of that first night, but I didn't touch it again. I'd spent the last 48 hours keeping busy, work, grocery runs, anything to keep my mind off the hole my family had left. I didn't call them. I didn't text. I'd seen enough on Instagram to know they were still at that resort, probably lounging by the pool while I ate cold leftovers alone. My phone stayed quiet too. No apologies, no check-ins, nothing. It was like I didn't exist. But that changed on the second day. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through channels I didn't care about, when my phone started buzzing. WhatsApp lit up with a flood of messages, one after another, like they'd all remembered me at once. I picked it up, my thumb hovering over the screen, not sure I even wanted to look. The first one was from Brielle. Julian, where are you? Like I was the one who'd disappeared. Then Skylar, Dad, are you okay? Please answer. Maddox chimed in with, Yo, Dad, what's up? You good? I scrolled through 49 messages total, piling up over a few hours. Voice notes too, Skylar's voice, soft and shaky, saying, Dad, I'm worried. Just let us know you're fine. Brielle sent a longer one later. Julian, please don't shut me out. We're flying back early. Talk to me. I sat there, staring at the screen, the words blurring together. Part of me wanted to feel something, relief, maybe, or even anger, but I didn't. It was too late for that. They'd had days to reach out, and now, what? They were scared I'd gone off the deep end? I set the phone down and leaned back, my hands resting on my knees. The house creaked around me, the fridge humming in the kitchen. I could have answered. Could have typed back. I'm here. Where the hell were you? But I didn't. They didn't deserve that yet. Instead, I got an idea. I grabbed my phone again, opened Instagram, and flipped through my camera roll. There wasn't much, just some work pics, a shot of my truck, and then one from yesterday. I'd stopped at the grocery store after my shift, picked up a cheap chocolate cake from the bakery section. It was small, kind of sad-looking, with happy birthday scribbled in messy icing. I'd taken a picture of myself holding it in the kitchen. No smile, just me, and the cake under the fluorescent light. I hadn't planned to post it, didn't even eat the damn thing, but now it felt right. I uploaded it, no filter, no caption, no tags. Just the timestamp. March 28th, 2025, 7:42 p.m. I hit post and watched it go live. It wasn't about being petty. It wasn't some big screw you to them. It was a marker, a quiet little flag in the ground saying, I'm still here. I see you. And I'm not the one who's missing. I tossed the phone on the cushion next to me and stood up, stretching my arms over my head. My back popped from too many hours on the couch, and I walked to the window, peering out at the dark street. The neighbors' lights were on, warm and yellow, families inside doing normal stuff. My house felt like a shell, but I wasn't sad about it, not anymore. Those 49 messages kept buzzing in my mind, though. They weren't apologies. Not really. They were panic, maybe guilt, but not remorse. Brielle's "don't shut me out" stuck with me the most. She didn't get it. I wasn't shutting her out. She'd locked me out days ago, and now she wanted back and like nothing happened. I shook my head, a dry laugh slipping out. Skylar's voice note played in my head too, her worry tugging at me a little. She's my girl, always has been, but even she'd gone along with this. Maddox? He'd probably just shrug it off if I called him out. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water, and leaned against the counter, sipping it slow. My phone buzzed again, another message, probably number 50, but I ignored it. They'd see the post soon enough. They'd know I wasn't sulking or lost. I was right here, watching, waiting. The cake sat on the counter still, untouched, the icing starting to crack. I didn't need it. Didn't need their rushed words either. What I needed was something they couldn't give me yet, answers. And I'd get them, one way or another. For now, I'd let them squirm. Let them wonder. Because I wasn't the guy they thought I was anymore. Not after this. 3 days after my birthday, I was sitting in the living room, the TV on low, some dumb game show buzzing in the background. I hadn't answered any of those 49 messages, hadn't called back, hadn't even looked at my phone much since I posted that cake picture. It was late afternoon, the sun slanting through the blinds, casting stripes across the carpet. I'd just gotten home from work, still in my dusty jacket, when the doorbell rang. It wasn't a soft knock. It was sharp, insistent, like someone who didn't want to be ignored. I stood up slow, my boots heavy on the floor, and walked to the door. I didn't know what I expected, but my gut told me it was them. I turned the knob and pulled it open, and there they were, Brielle, Skylar, Maddox, and her parents, Greg and Rochelle, all standing on my porch like some awkward family portrait. Brielle was in front, holding a shiny gift bag, her smile tight and fake, the kind she uses when she's nervous. Skylar and Maddox hung back, Skylar picking at her nails, Maddox staring at his shoes. Greg and Rochelle stood there like they owned the place, Greg's arms crossed, Rochelle's lips pursed. I didn't say a word, just leaned against the doorframe, looking at them, letting the silence stretch out. Brielle shifted her weight, the gift bag crinkling in her hands. Julian, she started, her voice too bright. We're back. We wanted to see you. I didn't move, didn't nod, just kept my eyes on her. She faltered, then held up the bag like it was a peace offering. I got you something. For your birthday. I glanced at it, probably some overpriced shirt or watch she thought would fix this. I didn't take it. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened Instagram. I held it up, Maddox's post right there on the screen. He won't even notice we're gone, LOL. I turned it so they could all see, my thumb resting on the edge. The air changed, like someone sucked the oxygen out of it. Brielle's smile dropped. Skylar's head snapped up, her eyes wide. Maddox shifted, muttering something under his breath. Greg cleared his throat, but I didn't give him a chance to speak. I looked straight at him, his smug face all red from the sun, and said, "You're not welcome here." My voice was calm, low, but it cut through the tension like a blade. Greg blinked, his mouth opening, then closing. Rochelle stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Now, Julian, that's uncalled for." I didn't let her finish. I said what I said. "You don't get to walk in here. Not after this." I nodded at the phone, then stepped aside, holding the door open just enough for Brielle and the kids. "You three can come in." "They can't." Brielle hesitated, glancing back at her parents, but I didn't budge. Greg huffed, turning to Rochelle like he expected her to fight me, but she just glared, her hands on her hips. After a long second, Brielle nodded at Skylar and Maddox, and they shuffled past me into the house. I shut the door behind them, leaving Greg and Rochelle standing there, their shadows still on the porch. Inside, the living room felt smaller with them in it. Skylar sat on the edge of the couch, her knees bouncing. Maddox leaned against the wall, arms crossed, avoiding my eyes. Brielle stood in the middle, still clutching that gift bag like it was a lifeline. I walked past her, set my phone on the coffee table, and turned to face them. "So," I said, my hands in my pockets, "how was the beach?" Brielle flinched, her mouth opening, then closing. Skylar looked like she might cry, her fingers twisting together. Maddox shrugged, mumbling, "It was fine." I nodded, letting that sit for a second. "Fine," I repeated. "Good to know." I didn't yell. I didn't need to. The weight of it was already there, pressing down on them. Brielle took a step toward me, her voice soft. "Julian, we didn't mean for it to be like this. It was supposed to be." I held up a hand, stopping her. "Don't. Not yet." I looked at Skylar, her big eyes all watery, then at Maddox, his jaw tight. "You're here now. That's something. But them." I jerked my head toward the door. "They don't get a pass. And neither do you, not yet." I sat down in my chair, the one by the window, and picked up the remote, turning the TV off. The room went quiet, just the sound of their breathing and the faint hum of the fridge. They wanted to talk, to explain, but I wasn't ready to hear it. Not until I knew they felt this, really felt it. I'd let them in, sure, but this house wasn't their playground anymore. It was mine, and I was done being the guy they could leave behind. The air in the kitchen felt thick as I stood there, facing Brielle, Skylar, and Maddox. They'd followed me in after I shut the door on Greg and Rochelle, and now we were here, the four of us crammed around the table like some messed-up family meeting. I'd grabbed a folder from the counter, the one I'd been filling with everything I'd found. Bank statements, screenshots, credit card charges. It was heavy in my hands, heavier than it should have been, and I dropped it on the table with a thud. The sound made Skylar jump, her eyes darting to it like it might bite her. Brielle sat down slow, still holding that stupid gift bag, while Maddox stayed standing, his arms crossed tight. I didn't sit. I stood there, looking at them, and finally asked the question that had been burning in me since I saw that Instagram post. "When did I become invisible to you?" My voice was steady, quieter than I felt, but it hit them hard. Brielle's head snapped up, her mouth opening like she had an answer ready, but nothing came out at first. Skylar stared at the table, her fingers tracing the wood grain. Maddox shifted his weight, his jaw clenching. I opened the folder, spreading out the papers. $3,800 withdrawn from our savings, $92,000 racked up on that secret card, resort charges stamped with dates that lined up with my birthday. I pointed at Maddox's post, the LOL glaring up at us. "You think this is funny?" I said, tapping it with my finger. "You think leaving me here while you're all off sipping drinks is a joke?" Brielle found her voice then, leaning forward, her hands clasped tight. "Julian, it wasn't like that. We were going to surprise you, do something when we got back. It got out of hand, that's all." Her words sounded rehearsed, like she'd been practicing them on the plane. I didn't buy it. I flipped to a screenshot of her texting Rochelle weeks ago, found it in her old phone I dug out of the closet, saying, "He'll be fine, Mom. Let's just go." I held it up, watching her face go pale. "This doesn't look like a surprise to me," I said. "This looks like you plan to ditch me." Maddox piped up then, his voice rough. "Dad, it was just a dumb post. I didn't mean it like that." I turned to him, my eyes narrowing. "You didn't mean it? You wrote it, Maddox. You laughed about it. You took my money I gave you for your place, and spent it on this." He looked away, his shoulders slumping, but he didn't argue. Skylar started crying then, soft little sobs that made my chest ache. She's always been the sensitive one, my little girl who'd climb into my lap when she was scared. "Dad," she said, her voice breaking, "it was supposed to be for you too. We were all going to go, me, you, Mom, Maddox. But then Grandpa said," she trailed off, wiping her eyes. I leaned in, my hands flat on the table. "Said what, Skylar?" She swallowed hard, glancing at Brielle, who wouldn't meet my gaze. "He said you'd bring down the vibe. Bet you're always so serious, and it'd be more fun without you." The words landed like a hammer, cracking something inside me. I straightened up, looking at Brielle. "Is that true?" She didn't answer right away, just stared at the table, her fingers twisting together. "Julian, it wasn't my idea," she finally said, her voice small. "Dad kept pushing, and I didn't know how to say no." I let out a dry laugh, shaking my head. "You didn't know how to say no? To your dad? But you knew how to say no to me, how to leave me out, how to take our money and run off with them." I flipped the folder shut, the snap of it loud in the quiet. "I've been working my ass off for this family, for you, for the kids. And this is what I get? You let Greg decide I'm not worth it. Skylar reached for my hand, her fingers cold. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't want it to be like this. I looked at her, saw the truth in her eyes. She meant it. But it didn't erase the hurt. Maddox mumbled something that might have been sorry, but he still wouldn't look at me. Brielle stood up, stepping closer. Julian, we can fix this. Please. I stepped back, out of her reach. Fix it? You don't fix something you broke on purpose. I grabbed the folder, holding it up. This is what you did. You don't get to walk in here with a gift bag and some tears and make it go away. The room went still, just Skylar's sniffles and the faint hum of the fridge. I looked at them, my wife, my kids, and felt the betrayal cut deeper than I'd expected. They'd chosen Greg's version of fun over me, and I wasn't sure I could forgive that yet. After that showdown in the kitchen, I didn't sleep much. The house felt different now, like it wasn't theirs anymore, just mine. Brielle, Skylar, and Maddox had left the room quiet. Skylar still crying, Maddox slinking off to his old bedroom, Brielle hovering like she wanted to say more but didn't dare. I'd laid it all out, the money, the lies, the way they'd made me feel, and I wasn't backing down. The next morning, I got up early, the sun barely up, and started making changes. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, laptop open, and pulled up our bank accounts. My hands moved fast, clicking through screens, setting up a new account in just my name. I transferred half our savings, enough to cover 3 months of the mortgage and utilities, into it, leaving the rest for Brielle to figure out. She'd have to start pulling her weight now. I canceled the joint credit card, the one she thought I didn't know about, and set up a direct payment for Skylar's college tuition so it'd go straight to the school. No more middleman, no more chances for that money to disappear. By the time the coffee was cold, I'd drawn a line in the sand. I wasn't kicking them out, not yet, but things were going to be different. Brielle came downstairs around 8, her hair messy, as puffy like she hadn't slept either. She stopped in the doorway, watching me pack up my laptop. Julian, what are you doing? She asked, her voice shaky. I didn't look up, just kept stacking papers. Making sure I'm not invisible anymore, I said. You're in the guest room from now on. Separate accounts. You pay half the bills. Skylar's tuition's covered, but that's it. No more free rides. Her face crumpled, but I kept going. And I changed the locks. You'll get a key when I know you're serious about this. She stared at me, mouth open, then sank into a chair. Julian, this is crazy. We can talk about this. I cut her off, standing up. We talked last night. You didn't listen then. Now you will. I grabbed my keys and headed to the garage, leaving her there. At the hardware store, I bought new deadbolts, heavy ones, and spent the morning installing them. The drill buzzed in my hands, the sound drowning out the noise in my head. Maddox came down as I was finishing the back door, his hair sticking up, still in yesterday's clothes. Dad, what's with the locks? He asked, rubbing his eyes. I tightened the last screw and stood up, brushing sawdust off my jeans. It's my house too, I said. You want in, you knock. You want to stay, you start acting like it. He frowned, but didn't argue, just shuffled back upstairs. Skylar was different. She came out later, her eyes red but dry now, and sat on the porch step while I tested the new key. Dad, she said, her voice small, I don't want you to hate me. I stopped, looking at her, my little girl all grown up and caught in this mess. I don't hate you, I said, softer than I meant to. But I can't trust you yet. You've got to show me you mean it. She nodded, hugging her knees, and I felt that old ache for her, the one that never goes away. I finished up and went inside, resetting the Wi-Fi password next, something simple, Julian 40, but they wouldn't guess it. Brielle tried to talk again when I came back in, following me to the living room. This isn't you, Julian. Locking us out, splitting everything, it's not fair. I turned to her, my hands in my pockets. Fair? You took our money, left me here, let your dad call me dead weight. That's not fair. This is me surviving. She flinched, but I didn't stop. You want to fix it? Earn it. Respect's gone. You've got to bring it back. She didn't say anything, just stood there, tears welling up. Maddox stormed out then, grabbing his jacket. This is bullshit. Dad, he snapped. I'm out. He slammed the door, the new lock clicking behind him. I didn't chase him. He'd figure it out or he wouldn't. Skylar stayed, though, hovering near me the rest of the day, helping with small stuff, bringing me a screwdriver, making coffee. She didn't say much, but she was there, and that was something. By night, the house felt solid again, locked up tight, mine in a way it hadn't been before. Brielle moved her stuff to the guest room without a word, her footsteps heavy on the stairs. I sat on the couch, the new key in my hand, and looked around. This wasn't revenge, it was a wall, a boundary carved in stone. They'd have to climb it if they wanted back in. And I'd be watching, waiting to see if they could. A week after I changed the locks, things settled into a strange new normal. Brielle stayed in the guest room, quiet and distant, coming and going without much talk. Skylar stuck around more, her presence soft but steady, like she was trying to glue something back together. Maddox hadn't come back since he stormed out, and I didn't push him, let him cool off, figure out what he wanted. I kept busy with work, the construction site a welcome distraction, the noise of hammers and saws drowning out the mess at home. But trouble showed up again on a Saturday morning, right when I thought I could breathe. I was in the garage, tinkering with my truck's oil filter, when I heard a car pull into the driveway. I wiped my hands on a rag and stepped out, squinting against the sun. Greg's silver SUV sat there, engine still running, and he climbed out, his face red and tight like he'd been stewing all week. Rochelle stayed in the passenger seat, her arms crossed, glaring through the windshield. I leaned against the garage door, rag in hand, and waited. He marched up, stopping a few feet away, his voice loud enough to wake the neighbors. "Julian, what the hell do you think you're doing?" he barked. "Locking my daughter out, cutting her off. You're destroying this family." I didn't flinch, just looked at him, letting him puff himself up. He was taller than me, broader too, but I wasn't intimidated. Not anymore. "Destroying it?" I said, keeping my tone even. "Funny, I thought that started when you took them all to a resort and left me behind." He waved a hand, dismissing me. "That was a trip. A break. You're blowing this out of proportion, acting like some midlife crisis nutcase." I stepped forward then, closing the gap just enough to make him shift back. "A break," I repeated. "How much did it cost, Greg? That little break?" He blinked, caught off guard, then shrugged. "I don't know, about $7,500. What's that got to do with anything?" I nodded, letting that number hang there, then said, "I put $25,000 into Skylar's education last year. Paid for her books, her dorm, her classes. What VEU done for her future?" His mouth opened, then shut, his face going redder. I didn't stop. "You don't get to stand here and lecture me about family. You decided I wasn't worth bringing along, convinced Brielle I'd ruin your fun. And now you're mad I'm not rolling over for it?" Rochelle climbed out of the car then, her heels clicking on the pavement. "Julian, you're being ridiculous," she snapped. "Brielle's a wreck because of you. She's saying you're cold, unreasonable." I cut her off, my voice sharp now. "She's a wreck because she got caught. You don't get to spin this on me." Greg took a step closer, pointing a finger. "You watch how you talk to us. We're her parents, and I'm her husband." I shot back. Or I was, until you helped her forget that. They stood there, fuming, but I didn't back down. I'd had enough of their high and mighty act. "Go home," I said, turning back to the garage. "This isn't your fight." Greg huffed, muttering something about me being ungrateful, then stormed back to the car. Rochelle followed, throwing one last glare over her shoulder. They peeled out, tires squealing, and I watched them go, the rag still clenched in my fist. Later that day, I checked Facebook, should have known better, and saw Brielle's latest post. Sometimes people change, and not for the better. Midlife hits hard. A dozen likes, a few sad emojis, comments from her friends saying, "Stay strong, girl." I stared at it, the words twisting in my gut. She was painting me as the bad guy, the cold one, like I'd snapped for no reason. I could have posted something back, dumped the receipts, the screenshots, the truth, but I didn't. Let her have her story. The people who mattered knew what happened. My buddy Pete from work called that night, asking if I was okay. He'd seen the post. "She's full of it," he said. "We all know you, man. You don't flip out over nothing." I thanked him, hung up, and sat on the couch, the house quiet again. Skylar came down a little later, curling up next to me with a mug of tea. "Dad," she said, "I don't care what Mom says. You're not the one who's wrong." I put an arm around her, feeling her lean into me, and nodded. "Thanks, kid. I didn't need the world to see it. I had the folder, the facts, the loyalty of the ones who stuck around. Greg could yell, Brielle could post, but I knew the truth. And that was enough for now. Weeks had passed since Greg's blow-up in the driveway, and the house had settled into a rhythm I could live with. It wasn't peaceful, exactly. More like a ceasefire, everyone figuring out where they stood. Brielle stayed in the guest room, coming and going with her head down, her words short and careful. Skylar was around a lot, popping in after classes, Her quiet company a lifeline I didn't know I needed. Maddox, though, he'd been a ghost since he stormed out, and I let him be. He's my son, sure, but he's a man now, and men have to face their choices. Then one Tuesday, my phone rang while I was eating lunch at the construction site, a sandwich in one hand, dust all over my boots. It was Maddox. I set the sandwich down, wiped my hands on my jeans, and answered. "Dad," he said, his voice low, "can we talk?" I leaned against the truck, the sun hot on my neck. "Yeah," I said. "What's up?" He hesitated, then, "I'm in a jam. Rent's due, and I'm short. Can you help?" I didn't answer right away, just listened to the hum of the site around me. Drills whining, guys shouting. Part of me wanted to say no, let him sink a little, feel the weight of that LOL he'd thrown at me. But he was still my kid. "Come by tonight," I said. "We'll figure it out." He showed up around 7, his hoodie wrinkled, hair a mess, looking like he hadn't slept. I let him in, the new lock clicking behind us, and we sat at the kitchen table. "How short are you?" I asked, pouring him a glass of water. He stared at it, not drinking. 600. I thought I had it, but work cut my hours. I nodded, pulling out my laptop. "All right. We're not just throwing money at it, though. Show me what you've got, bills, pay stubs, all of it." He blinked, surprised, but dug into his backpack, pulling out crumpled papers. We spent an hour going through it. His rent, his phone bill, the little he'd saved. I showed him how I'd always done it for the house, tracking every dollar, making it stretch. "See this?" I said, pointing at the screen. "You plan ahead, you don't get stuck." He nodded, slow, like it was sinking in. By the end, we'd made a spreadsheet. Nothing fancy, just numbers and rows. I gave him the 600 cash from my new account, but I made him write it down. "You owe me," I said. "Not because I'm mad, just so you learn." He looked at me then, really looked, and said, "I get it, Dad." He didn't say sorry, not out loud, but later that night, I noticed his Instagram was gone. No posts, no profile, just a blank space where that caption used to be. He asked if he could come by Sundays, just to hang out, and I said yeah, feeling something shift between us. Skylar kept coming too, her visits more regular now. She'd sit with me on the couch, watching old movies, or help in the garage, handing me tools while I fixed stuff. One night, she hugged me tight before leaving, whispering, "I'm glad you're my dad." It hit me hard, that little crack of light in all this dark. Brielle, though, she was still a puzzle. Some days, she'd try nostalgia, talking about when we met, how we'd laughed over cheap pizza. Other days, she'd blame me, saying I'd pushed her away with the locks and the accounts. I didn't bite either way. "You pushed first," I'd say, and she'd go quiet, retreating to her room. I wasn't holding my breath for her to change. She liked her story too much, the one where I was the problem. But I didn't need her to see me anymore. Maddox's Sundays turned into a routine, him showing up with coffee, us working on his budget or just talking. He didn't say much about the trip, but I could tell he was carrying it, that guilt simmering under his tough act. Skylar stayed caught in the middle, loving us both, but she picked me more often, her loyalty clear in the way she'd linger. The fractures were still there, big ones, jagged and raw, but these first steps, these moments with my kids, felt like something solid. I'd let Brielle figure her own path. I'd already let go of needing her to come back. The kids, though, they were enough to keep me going, enough to start rebuilding on. A month after my 40th birthday, I woke up to a quiet house, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty anymore, just still, like the world's holding its breath. It was a Saturday, the sun creeping through the blinds, painting the living room in soft gold. I sat up on the couch where I'd fallen asleep, a blanket tangled around my legs, the TV off for once. My coffee mug from last night sat cold on the table, next to my phone, which buzzed with a new email. I rubbed my eyes, stretched, and picked it up. It was from my divorce lawyer. Short, simple, saying Brielle's attorney had reached out. No fight, no drama, just paperwork moving forward. I set the phone down, leaned back, and let that sink in. It wasn't a shock. Brielle and I hadn't really been together since she came back, not in any real way. The guest room, the separate accounts, the way we barely talked, it was all leading here. I didn't feel sad, though. Maybe I should have, but I didn't. I felt clear, like I could see myself again, not just the guy who paid bills or fixed things, but me, Julian Hartley, a man who'd made it through the mess. I got up, made fresh coffee, and stood by the kitchen window, watching the street wake up. Kids rode bikes. A neighbor waved as he mowed his lawn. My truck sat in the driveway, dusty but solid, like me. I thought about that night a month ago, the dark house, the whiskey, the Instagram post that started it all. It felt far away now, like it happened to someone else. I'd changed since then, not loud or flashy, but deep, in a way I could feel in my bones. Later that day, I opened my laptop and logged into Facebook. My status still said, married, but that didn't fit anymore. I clicked edit, my fingers hovering, then typed, it's complicated. I hit save, watched it update, and sat back. It wasn't a big statement. No one needed the details, but it was true. Life was complicated. Family was messy. Love left scars. Some you could see, some you couldn't. I scrolled through my feed, saw a picture Skylar posted last night. Her and me in the garage, me holding a wrench, her laughing. Best dad ever, she'd captioned it. I smiled. A real one, the kind that warms you up inside. Maddox had texted earlier too, saying he'd be by tomorrow with coffee, like always. They were still here, my kids, picking up the pieces with me. Brielle was upstairs, probably packing more of her stuff. She'd been moving things out bit by bit. No fuss, just quiet steps away. I didn't stop her. She'd made her choice long before the papers came, and I'd made mine. I walked outside, the air cool on my face, and sat on the porch steps. The neighborhood buzzed around me, alive and normal, and I felt part of it again, not stuck, not invisible. I thought about the last month, Greg's yelling, Brielle's stories, the way Skylar and Maddox came back, slow but sure. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy, but it was mine. My phone buzzed again, a text from Pete, my work buddy. Saw the status. You good, man? I typed back, yeah, better than good. He sent a thumbs up, and I put the phone down, looking out at the street. 40 wasn't what I'd expected. No party, no big celebration, but it gave me something better. Clarity. I could see myself now, not as the guy they forgot, but as the one who stood up, who claimed his place. Skylar saw it. She stuck by me. Maddox was starting too. His Sunday visits proof he wasn't running anymore. Even my crew at work noticed, one of them saying last week, "You seem different, Hartley." Lighter. I was. The weight of being invisible, of carrying them all without them knowing, was gone. I let it go, piece by piece, and built something new. The divorce wasn't a loss. It was a door closing so I could open another. I stood up, brushed off my jeans, and went back inside. The house smelled like coffee, like home, and I grabbed my mug, taking a long sip. I didn't need balloons or a cake. I didn't need Brielle's gift bag or Greg's approval. Being seen by my kids, my friends, and most of all, by myself, was the gift I'd claimed. 40 wasn't a milestone they gave me. It was one I took, and that was enough. I pulled up to the curb, the engine idling as my kids, Logan and Ava, chattered excitedly in the back seat about their first day back at school. Their happiness should have been contagious, but all I felt was a knot of unease twisting in my gut. I didn't need a crystal ball to know what was coming. I could already picture her, Natalie, my ex-wife, standing there like a queen surveying her subjects, with Ryan at her side, smug and ready to throw his weight around. It was their signature move, and I was the unwitting audience yet again. "Daddy, are you okay?" Ava's small voice pulled me out of my thoughts. Her wide, innocent eyes stared at me from the rearview mirror, and I forced a smile. She didn't need to see my tension. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's your big day, remember? Let's make it awesome." I turned off the car, grabbed my bag, and stepped out, helping Logan and Ava with their backpacks. Their excitement was contagious, a bubble of pure joy in an otherwise tense moment. I was just about to close the car door when I saw them, Natalie and Ryan. Their smiles were too wide, their postures too calculated. My stomach sank like a stone, but I kept my expression neutral. No way was I giving them the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. "Jason," Natalie greeted, her voice dripping with faux politeness. "What a surprise to see you here." I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. "It's school drop-off, Natalie. Where else would I be?" She smirked, a gesture I'd once found charming but now only found infuriating. "Well, You know, some parents are late or distracted. I wasn't sure if you'd be on time. It wasn't a dig. It was a missile aimed at my character, one she'd been launching since our divorce. Ryan stood behind her, his arms crossed, his face wearing that self-satisfied smirk he always wore. It screamed, "I got your life now, and you're just a supporting character in mine." "Logan, Ava," Natalie squealed, her voice turning syrupy sweet as she crouched to their level. "Come here, my darlings. Did Daddy make sure you had everything for school?" Logan gave her a polite nod, while Ava glanced at me before stepping forward hesitantly. My daughter was sharp for her age. She sensed things no one else did, and I could tell she didn't like the tone her mom was using. Ryan chuckled, a low, arrogant sound that grated my nerves. "You know, Natalie, it's so nice to see Jason still trying. Even after all this time." "Still trying?" I echoed, my jaw tightening. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Oh, nothing," Natalie said, standing back up and brushing invisible lint from her designer coat. "We're just so proud of how you've managed." Managed? Like my life was a train wreck, they were graciously applauding for staying on the tracks. My fists clenched at my sides, but I forced myself to stay calm. They wanted a reaction, and I wasn't going to give it to them. "Logan, Ava, let's go," I said, my tone firm but kind. I guided my kids away, but of course, they weren't finished. "Jason," Ryan called after me, his voice oozing mockery. "Don't take it so personally. We're all here for the kids, right? No need to make it awkward." I turned back, meeting his smug gaze with a steady one of my own. "Awkward? No, Ryan. Awkward would be me commenting on your parenting, but I won't stoop that low." His smirk faltered for a split second, and I almost smiled. Almost. As I walked my kids toward the school entrance, Logan turned to me. "Why does Mom always act like that?" "She's just being herself," I replied, trying to keep it neutral. He didn't need the ugly truth. Not yet. But as I looked back one last time, I caught the faintest shift in Natalie and Ryan's expressions. Their smug smiles had faltered, replaced by something harder to read. For a second, I wondered if they'd seen through the calm facade I'd worked so hard to maintain. And then it hit me. Maybe they hadn't gotten under my skin as much as they thought. Maybe their cracks were beginning to show. As Logan and Ava skipped ahead, I straightened my shoulders. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The knot in my stomach from earlier was still there, but it was morphing into something else as I drove away from the school. Something sharper. Anger. Natalie and Ryan's smugness wasn't new. I'd lived through enough of their theatrics to know their game. But this time, it hit differently. Maybe it was the way they dismissed me in front of Logan and Ava, planting seeds of doubt about me in my kids' minds. Maybe it was Ryan's condescending tone, or Natalie's fake smiles that barely masked her digs. Either way, I wasn't going to let it slide. Not anymore. As I pulled into my driveway and killed the engine, I found myself gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. My knuckles turned white, and for a moment, I let the frustration wash over me. Natalie had spent years spinning her narrative, painting me as the barely keeping it together ex-husband. Ryan, her loyal audience, played his part perfectly, chiming in just enough to keep the facade intact. But today, as their smirks faltered, I realized something. They were overplaying their hand. I wasn't the man they thought I was anymore. I stepped out of the car and walked into the house, the familiar creak of the front door grounding me. The silence was a stark contrast to the chaos at the school, and for a moment, I just stood there, letting it settle. Then, with a deep breath, I headed to my office. If Natalie and Ryan wanted to play games, it was time for me to stop playing along. I booted up my computer, the faint hum of the machine filling the room as I sat down. This wasn't a moment for blind anger. I needed to be strategic, calm, collected, and prepared. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before I started typing. I began going through every detail of my business, the numbers, the contracts, the upcoming deals. I wasn't looking for problems. I was looking for solutions, leverage, anything to fortify my position. And there it was. The numbers. They didn't just look good. They looked exceptional. Better than even I had realized. In the past 6 months, I'd secured 2 major contracts that were now yielding steady returns. On top of that, an email from my accountant confirmed an upcoming meeting with a potential investor. A meeting that, if successful, would turn everything around. A grin crept onto my face. Maybe Natalie and Ryan had assumed I was still struggling, clinging to the remnants of my post-divorce life. But they didn't know the full story. They didn't know that I'd been rebuilding, brick by brick, while they were busy living in their bubble of self-satisfaction. The truth was, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And soon, they were going to see it for themselves. I leaned back in my chair, the pieces of a plan starting to form in my mind. The investor meeting was in 2 weeks, and if it went the way I expected, it would solidify everything. I'd not only save my company, but also position it as a contender in a highly competitive market. That wasn't just a win. It was a statement. A statement that I was far from the managed man Natalie had smugly described. A soft knock on the door broke my focus. "Daddy?" Ava's voice was tentative. I turned to see her standing in the doorway, her backpack still slung over one shoulder. "Ava, what's up? Shouldn't you be at school?" She gave me a sheepish smile. "I forgot my lunch. Mommy said she packed it, but it wasn't in my bag." Of course." I walked over and crouched to her level. "No worries, sweetheart. I'll make you a new one. Let's get you back to school." As I prepared her lunch and drove her back, I thought about the incident at the drop-off line. Natalie's little oversight wasn't a surprise. It was a pattern. A pattern of carelessness masked by her constant need to appear perfect. But perfection was a fragile thing, and the cracks were beginning to show. When we arrived back at school, I caught sight of Natalie and Ryan talking to another couple by the entrance. Their laughter echoed across the lot, but I saw the way Natalie's eyes darted to me as I walked Ava toward her class. She tried to cover it with a smile, but I didn't miss the flicker of discomfort. Good. Let her wonder. Let them both wonder. As I walked back to the car, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Control. For years, Natalie had dictated the narrative, and I'd let her. But now, I wasn't just reacting to her games, I was creating my own. And this time, I wasn't playing to survive. I was playing to win. The drive back from Ava's school was calm, at least on the surface. The radio hummed quietly in the background, a soothing melody that should have eased my nerves. But my mind was elsewhere, turning over Ryan's smug comment about buying out my company. Buying me out? Was that their big play? The thought made me tighten my grip on the steering wheel. For years, I'd worked tirelessly to build my business from the ground up, sacrificing nights, weekends, and so much more. And now, my ex-wife and her glorified sidekick thought they could swoop in and take it all? It was laughable and infuriating, but mostly laughable. When I got home, I headed straight to my office again. If they were serious, I needed to know the specifics. What was their angle? How deep did this go? I logged into my business accounts, scanning through the latest updates, but everything seemed normal at first glance. My contracts were solid, my cash flow was steady, and the investor meeting was set. But Ryan's comment lingered in my mind like a splinter. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Then it hit me. This wasn't just about the business. Ryan and Natalie had never hidden their disdain for me. This was personal, a calculated attempt to undermine me, to reduce me to the shadow of the man I'd become. And the worst part? They thought I wouldn't see it coming. "Think again," I muttered, sitting forward and typing Ryan's name into a database I used to track business registrations and investments. It wasn't long before something popped up, a series of LLCs connected to Ryan. Most were small, insignificant ventures. But one caught my eye. A newly registered company with a vague description about consulting and acquisitions. My stomach twisted. Consulting and acquisitions? It was clear as day what their plan was. Ryan had likely been sniffing around my industry, trying to find cracks, weaknesses, any point of entry to make a bid for my company. The arrogance of it all. Thinking they could outmaneuver me. They didn't even realize they were playing with fire. But what I found next wiped away any trace of humor I'd felt about their antics. An email buried in my spam folder caught my attention, flagged as urgent. It was from a mutual connection, a vendor I'd worked with for years. The message was short but packed a punch. "Jason, I've been approached by someone claiming to represent your company. They're asking for details about your upcoming projects." Thought you should know. My jaw tightened. Ryan. There was no doubt in my mind it was him. He'd been fishing for insider information, trying to get ahead of me by any means necessary. This wasn't just underhanded. It was illegal. I immediately replied to the vendor, thanking them for the heads up and asking them to forward me any further correspondence. Then I picked up my phone and called my accountant. Hey, I need you to run a quick audit, I said, keeping my voice calm despite the storm brewing inside me. Specifically, look for any unusual requests for financial data or project details in the past 6 months. Got it, they replied. Everything okay? Not yet, I said, but it will be. The call ended, and I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples. So that was their plan. Spread just enough misinformation to make my business look vulnerable, then swoop in with an offer to save it. It was conniving, sure, but also reckless. They'd underestimated me, and I wasn't about to let them off easy. By the time Dean got home, I'd gathered enough evidence to confirm my suspicions. As much as I hated to admit it, Natalie and Ryan weren't just playing games. They were launching an attack. But what they didn't realize was that I'd already begun building my defenses. As I explained the situation to Dean, his usual laid-back demeanor shifted. He listened intently, his brow furrowed. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. So, they're trying to take over your company? Not just the company, I said, my voice hardening. They're trying to discredit me, to make me look weak, like I can't hold it together. Dean's jaw clenched. That's low, even for Natalie. Yeah, well, it's not going to work, I said. They think they've got me cornered, but they don't know what I've got planned. Dean nodded, his hand resting on my shoulder. Whatever you need, I'm here. That simple statement grounded me. For years, I'd fought these battles on my own, but now I had someone in my corner. Someone who believed in me, not the version Natalie had crafted in her stories. The next morning, I made a few calls, starting with my lawyer. I need you to look into something, I said, discreetly. There's a chance someone's been fishing for information on my company. As the wheels began to turn, I felt a sense of clarity. Ryan and Natalie thought they were a step ahead, but they didn't realize they'd tipped their hand too early. Their arrogance had given me the edge I needed, and now, it was my turn to act. By the time I got to the office, my inbox had a message from the accountant. The audit revealed another surprising detail, a sudden spike in inquiries from companies connected to Ryan's LLC. It was all the proof I needed. This wasn't just a battle anymore. It was war, and I intended to win. As I sat in my office, staring at the evidence laid out before me, it became clear that Natalie and Ryan weren't just dabbling in sabotage, they were fully committed. Ryan's LLC wasn't just a vanity project, it was a weapon aimed directly at me. I had proof of their attempts to pry into my business and disrupt my partnerships, but that wasn't enough. I needed to turn their tactics against them, to show them that I wasn't the man they thought I was anymore. I leaned back in my chair, tapping a pen against my desk as a plan began to take shape. Natalie and Ryan thought they could exploit my vulnerabilities, but they'd underestimated one crucial detail. I'd spent years rebuilding not just my business, but myself. They were still fighting the old me, the one who used to crumble under Natalie's manipulations. That man was long gone. The first step was securing my position. I couldn't risk Ryan making any more inroads with my business partners, so I started making calls. The conversations were brief but strategic. I reached out to key stakeholders, subtly reinforcing our relationships without tipping my hand. I didn't mention Ryan or Natalie, not yet. For now, I simply reminded them of the value we built together and the opportunities still ahead. By the time I finished the last call, I felt more confident. My foundation was solid. But that was just the beginning. If Ryan wanted to play dirty, I'd show him how it was done. Legally, of course. I called my lawyer again, this time with a more pointed request. I want you to dig into Ryan's LLC, I said. Specifically, I need to know who's backing him and whether there's anything questionable about his dealings. My lawyer didn't miss a beat. Consider it done. Give me a day or two, and I'll have something for you. With that piece in motion, I turned my attention to the investor meeting scheduled for the following week. It wasn't just another meeting anymore. It was my ace in the hole. If I could lock down that deal, It would give me the leverage I needed to counter whatever Natalie and Ryan were planning. I spent the next few hours refining my pitch, anticipating every question and objection that might come up. By the time I was done, I felt ready for anything. Or so I thought. That evening, as I was packing up to leave the office, my phone buzzed with a new email. The sender's name stopped me cold. One of my top clients. My stomach tightened as I opened the message, expecting bad news. And sure enough, it was worse than I'd imagined. The client was pulling out of a major contract, citing concerns about the stability of my business. The wording was vague, but the implication was clear. Ryan's meddling was already starting to take effect. I sat there for a moment, the weight of the setback pressing down on me. But then something shifted. The old me might have panicked, spiraling into self-doubt and fear. Not this time. I wasn't going to let Ryan or Natalie see me falter. If anything, this only fueled my resolve. I picked up the phone and called the client directly. "I just got your email," I said, keeping my tone calm and professional. "I'd like to address any concerns you have about our partnership." The client hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Jason, it's not personal. We've just been hearing things. Rumors about financial instability, potential buyouts. It's enough to make us reconsider." "Rumors," I repeated, my jaw tightening. "I understand. But I want to assure you, those rumors are just that, rumors. My company is in a stronger position than ever, and I can't provide you with any documentation you need to confirm that." The client seemed to soften. "If you can back that up, we might be willing to reconsider. I'll have everything to you by tomorrow morning," I promised. "And if you have any other concerns, don't hesitate to reach out directly. Transparency is important to me." By the time the call ended, I felt a small sense of relief. The contract wasn't lost, not yet. But it was a reminder that Ryan's tactics weren't just annoying, they were dangerous. If I didn't act quickly, he could cause real damage. The next morning, my lawyer called with an update. "You were right to dig into Ryan's LLC," he said. "There's something interesting here. Several of his backers have questionable reputations, and at least one is involved in a pending legal dispute." I felt a spark of satisfaction. "Anything we can use?" "Potentially. It's enough to raise red flags, especially if he's trying to position himself as a legitimate player in your industry." "Good," I said, a plan forming in my mind. "Let's compile everything. I have a feeling it's going to come in handy." As I hung up, I realized that Ryan's arrogance might be his greatest weakness. He'd overreached, assuming I wouldn't fight back. But now I had the tools to not only defend myself, but to put him on the defensive. I spent the rest of the day preparing, finalizing documents for the investor meeting, reinforcing client relationships, and working with my lawyer to build a case against Ryan's interference. By the time I went to bed that night, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: control. Natalie and Ryan had underestimated me, and soon, they were going to regret it. I've always believed in staying one step ahead. It's not just a mantra, it's survival. And now, as I sat at my desk with evidence of Ryan and Natalie's schemes spread out before me, that belief was more important than ever. They'd been poking at the edges of my life, trying to find weak spots. What they didn't realize was that the harder they pushed, the stronger my resolve became. Ryan thought he could quietly infiltrate my business circles and unravel my reputation. Natalie thought she could stand smugly by, acting like the queen of the chessboard. But this wasn't their game anymore. It was mine. The first order of business was solidifying my relationships. Ryan's antics had stirred up doubts among my clients, so I made it my mission to extinguish those flames before they turned into a wildfire. I reached out to each of them, personally. These weren't quick phone calls or emails. I scheduled video meetings, walking them through every detail of my company's financials. I laid out projections, highlighted successes, and answered every question with unflinching honesty. It was exhausting, but it worked. By the time I finished the last meeting, the feedback was unanimous. My clients were back on board. Ryan's whispers weren't enough to sway them once they'd seen the truth. That was one fire extinguished. But I wasn't just playing defense, I was ready to strike back. I began leveraging my network to quietly gather information about Ryan. He was new to the industry, and his bold moves had ruffled more feathers than he realized. People were talking, and the stories weren't flattering. One connection, a mutual vendor, told me about an unpaid invoice Ryan had conveniently forgotten to settle. Another mentioned an aggressive pitch Ryan had made to one of their clients, promising services he couldn't possibly deliver. The picture was becoming clearer. Ryan wasn't just reckless, he was sloppy. I compiled every piece of intel into a growing file, but I wasn't ready to act on it yet. Timing was everything, and I needed to wait until I could deliver a blow that would really hurt. While I was busy shoring up my defenses, Ryan was doubling down on his efforts. The next move came in the form of an anonymous article published online. The piece was poorly written, but its intentions were clear. It painted me as a struggling businessman, desperate to keep my company afloat. It hinted at financial instability and cast doubt on my leadership abilities. I could see Ryan's fingerprints all over it. Subtlety wasn't his strong suit. Instead of reacting immediately, I forwarded the article to my lawyer. "We need to trace this," I told him. "Find out who's behind it." He chuckled darkly. "I've already got a few ideas. I'll get back to you." While my lawyer worked on that, I focused on the upcoming investor meeting. If I could secure their backing, it would be the final piece I needed to cement my position. The deal wasn't just about money. It was about sending a message to everyone watching. But as the meeting approached, I couldn't shake the feeling that Ryan wasn't finished. He was like a dog with a bone, unwilling to let go until he'd torn everything apart. That suspicion was confirmed when I received another email, this time from an old colleague. He'd been approached by Ryan, who was fishing for information about my past projects. The audacity was almost impressive. Almost. I responded with a simple message: "Thanks for the heads up. Let me know if he contacts you again." It wasn't much, but it was enough to plant a seed of doubt in Ryan's mind. He wouldn't know who was loyal to me and who wasn't. It was a subtle move, but one that I hoped would make him hesitate. By the end of the week, I felt more prepared than ever. My lawyer had traced the article back to a PR firm Ryan had hired, a firm with a questionable reputation of its own. That was the final nail in the coffin. Ryan thought he was building momentum, but in reality, he was stacking a house of cards. And when it fell, it wouldn't just collapse, it would implode. Before I called it a night, I sat down and wrote an email to my team. I didn't go into specifics about Ryan or Natalie, but I reminded them of our mission, our strengths, and the values that had gotten us this far. "This company was built on resilience," I wrote. "No matter what challenges we face, we will rise above them. Thank you for your hard work and dedication. I couldn't do this without you." When I hit send, I felt a flicker of pride. They might try to tear me down, but they'd never take away what I'd built. As I locked up for the night, I couldn't help but smile. Natalie and Ryan thought they were playing chess, but they didn't realize I was playing a different game entirely. The pieces were in place. Now, all I had to do was wait for the perfect moment to strike. The investor meeting was set for noon, and I arrived an hour early. Not because I was nervous, I was prepared, but because I wanted to own the room before anyone else even stepped in. Control the setting, control the narrative. That's something Natalie never understood. She'd always tried to dominate with theatrics, thinking the loudest voice won. But me? I'd learned to play the long game. I set up my materials, reviewed my presentation, and rehearsed my responses to potential questions. By the time the investors started arriving, the room felt like mine. When they walked in, I greeted them with confidence. Handshakes, eye contact, the whole 9 yards. The stakes were high, and I needed them to feel that I wasn't just ready for this deal. I was thriving because of it. "Jason, good to see you." One of them, Mr. Carter, said as he settled into a chair. "Heard some buzz about your company recently. Good things." I smiled, knowing exactly what buzz he was referring to. Ryan's little smear campaign hadn't gone unnoticed, but it had also backfired. The investors weren't just interested, they were curious. People love a good redemption story, and Ryan had unknowingly painted me as the underdog. "Well, Mr. Carter," I replied, my tone measured, "I think you'll find the reality even better than the rumors." The presentation went better than I could have hoped. I walked them through every facet of my business, revenue growth, market projections, and the key partnerships I'd secured. They asked tough questions, but I was ready. By the end, there wasn't a single ounce of doubt left in the room. "Jason," another investor said, leaning forward, This is impressive. I've seen a lot of pitches, but this feels solid. I'm in. The others nodded in agreement, and just like that, the deal was sealed. As they left, I shook each of their hands, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. This was more than just a win. It was validation. But I wasn't done yet. As I left the conference room, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my lawyer. Got the full details on Ryan. Call me when you're ready. Perfect timing. I stepped outside into the crisp afternoon air and made the call. My lawyer didn't waste time. Ryan's LLC is a disaster, he said. He's taken on more debt than he can handle, and his backers are starting to pull out. He's also made some legal missteps, nothing major yet, but enough to damage his credibility if it gets out. Exactly what I needed to hear, I said, already forming a plan. The next step was a PDA meeting at Logan and Ava's school that evening. Normally, I would have skipped it, but this time, I had a reason to show up. Ryan and Natalie would be there, no doubt expecting me to slink into the background like always. They didn't know I had a bombshell waiting for them. When I arrived, the room was buzzing with small talk. Parents exchanged pleasantries, teachers shuffled papers, and the principal tried to herd everyone into their seats. I spotted Natalie and Ryan near the front, laughing with another couple. Their smugness was palpable, and for a moment, I let myself enjoy the anticipation of what was about to happen. I waited until the principal finished her announcements, then raised my hand to speak. I'd like to take a moment to share some exciting news, I said, standing up. All eyes turned to me, including Natalie's. Her smile faltered slightly, but she quickly recovered, glancing at Ryan. I recently closed a major investment deal for my company, I continued, keeping my tone steady and confident. It's a partnership that not only secures our future, but positions us for significant growth in the coming years. There was polite applause, but the real reaction was in Natalie and Ryan's faces. Natalie's smile froze, her eyes darting to Ryan for reassurance. Ryan, meanwhile, looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. But that's not all, I added, my gaze locking onto Ryan. I'd also like to address some rumors that have been circulating, claims about my company's stability and leadership. Let me be clear, those rumors are false. The numbers speak for themselves, and the support of my investors only reinforces that. The room was silent, and I could feel the tension radiating from Natalie and Ryan. They were cornered, and they knew it. After the meeting, as people filed out, Natalie approached me. Her usual composure was slipping. Jason, she began, her voice forced. That's great news about your company. Really? Thanks, Natalie, I said, my tone polite but firm. It's amazing what you can achieve when you stay focused on the truth. Her smile wavered, and she stepped back. Ryan didn't even bother approaching me. He was too busy pretending to check his phone, avoiding eye contact. As I walked to my car, I couldn't help but smile. The bombshell had landed, and the fallout was only just beginning. Ryan and Natalie had played their hand, but now the tables were turning, and I wasn't done yet. By the next morning, the ripple effects of my announcement at the PDA meeting had begun to spread. Word traveled fast in our shared circles, and the buzz wasn't just about my new investor deal. It was about how I'd effectively shut down the rumors Ryan and Natalie had been trying to spread. It wasn't a win they could ignore, and I knew it wouldn't be long before they tried to counter. Sure enough, my phone buzzed just after lunch. It was a text from Natalie. Jason, can we talk? It's important. I stared at the message for a moment, debating whether to respond. Natalie rarely initiated contact unless she had an angle, and I had no intention of playing into her hands. After a few seconds, I typed back a curt reply, busy. What's this about? Her response came quickly. Ryan mentioned something about business conflicts. I think we should clear the air before things get messy. Messy? That was rich, coming from her. They were the ones who tried to sabotage me, and now she was acting like the voice of reason. Still, her sudden concern piqued my curiosity. I decided to humor her, if only to see what she was angling for. We agreed to meet later that evening at a neutral spot, a small coffee shop downtown. I arrived early, finding a corner table where I could observe the room. When Natalie walked in, she was dressed to impress, as usual, her heels clicking against the tiled floor. But there was something different about her demeanor. Less confidence, more tension. Jason, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Thanks for meeting me. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. What's this about, Natalie? She hesitated, glancing around as if to make sure no one was listening. Look, I know things have been tense lately. Ryan might have overstepped, and I don't want it to escalate. Overstepped? I repeated, my tone even. Natalie, he didn't just overstep. He tried to undermine my business, spread false rumors, and poach my clients. That's not overstepping. It's deliberate sabotage. Her face flushed, but she quickly composed herself. Ryan can be impulsive. He thought he was helping us secure opportunities. It wasn't personal. Not personal. I leaned forward, my voice steady but firm. He used my name, my reputation, to push his agenda. It doesn't get more personal than that. Natalie fidgeted with her coffee cup, avoiding my gaze. For a moment, I thought she might actually apologize, but instead, she switched tactics. Look, I didn't know the full extent of what he was doing. I swear. But if you're willing to let this go, I'll make sure he backs off. I almost laughed. Let it go? Natalie, I'm not the one who started this. But I can promise you this. I'm going to finish it. Her eyes narrowed, the tension between us thickening. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done playing defense, I said, my voice cool. You and Ryan made a mistake thinking I'd just roll over. I've already gathered enough evidence to prove his interference, and if you keep pushing, I won't hesitate to take it public. Natalie's jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Jason, think about the kids. Do you really want to drag this out? The kids, I said sharply, are the only reason I'm not dragging you both through the mud already. But don't mistake my restraint for weakness. The conversation ended soon after, with Natalie storming out of the coffee shop. I stayed behind for a few minutes, finishing my drink and letting the adrenaline settle. She'd come expecting to manipulate me, to talk her way out of the mess she and Ryan had created. Instead, she'd walked away empty-handed. But this wasn't just about Natalie anymore. Ryan was the real problem, and I had no intention of giving him the same courtesy. That night, I called my lawyer. Alex, I said, my tone resolute, it's time. I want to move forward with exposing Ryan's actions. Alex didn't hesitate. I've already drafted the initial documents. We'll start by alerting his backers and business partners about his unethical practices. Once that's in motion, we can escalate if necessary. Perfect, I said. Let's make sure this sticks. Over the next few days, Alex and I worked tirelessly to execute our plan. We reached out to Ryan's backers, providing them with evidence of his shady dealings and legal missteps. The response was immediate. Several of them pulled their support, citing concerns about his credibility. Meanwhile, I reached out to key figures in our shared network, quietly sharing the truth about Ryan's attempts to sabotage me. It didn't take long for the word to spread. His reputation, once bolstered by Natalie's influence, was quickly unraveling. Then came the icing on the cake. At a business event later that week, I ran into Ryan himself. He tried to act casual, greeting me with a forced smile, but the tension in his posture gave him away. Jason, he said, extending a hand. Good to see you. I didn't take it. Ryan, I replied, my voice steady. How's business? His smile faltered, but he quickly recovered. Busy as always. Good to hear, I said. Though I imagine it's harder to stay busy without certain backers, isn't it? The color drained from his face, and for a moment, he just stood there, speechless. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. As I watched him leave, a sense of satisfaction settled over me. The tables had turned, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was in control. Ryan and Natalie had underestimated me, and now they were paying the price. But this wasn't the end. Not yet. The silence was the first thing I noticed. The calls, the emails, the constant whispers that had been buzzing around my business just stopped. At first, I thought it was the calm before another storm, but the truth was simpler. Ryan's world was starting to collapse. Word of his shady dealings had spread like wildfire. Alex had executed the plan flawlessly, delivering the damning evidence to Ryan's backers, partners, and even his prospective clients. One by one, They started distancing themselves. At first, it was subtle, quiet withdrawals of support, a few canceled meetings. Then it turned public. A major backer issued a statement about re-evaluating their relationship with Ryan's LLC, which was business speak for "we're out." I didn't gloat. Okay, maybe I did a little, quietly, to myself, but outwardly, I kept things professional. This wasn't about rubbing it in Ryan's face. It was about showing everyone, including Natalie, that I wasn't the pushover they thought I was. By midweek, my phone rang, and I wasn't surprised to see Natalie's name on the screen. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. I answered, keeping my tone neutral. "Natalie." There was a pause, just long enough for me to hear her unease. "Jason," she began, her voice lacking its usual confidence. "We need to talk." "About?" Another pause. "About Ryan." I almost laughed. Of course, it was about Ryan. She wasn't calling to apologize or make amends. She was calling to clean up the mess she'd helped create. "I'm listening," I said, leaning back in my chair. "He's struggling," she admitted. The words clearly difficult for her to say. The rumors, the loss of support. It's all hitting him hard. "And this concerns me how?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She sighed. "Jason, I know you're angry." "Angry?" I interrupted, my tone sharp. "Natalie, angry doesn't even begin to cover it. Your husband tried to destroy my career, my reputation. He put my business, my livelihood, at risk. And now that it's backfiring, you expect me to care about how it's affecting him?" Her silence spoke volumes. Finally, she said, "I didn't know it would go this far." I couldn't help but scoff. "You didn't know? Natalie, you stood by and let him attack me, and now you're surprised there are consequences?" She tried again, softer this time. "Jason, I know you don't owe me anything, but this is spiraling. Ryan's talking about, well, he's talking about lawyers. Retaliation." That caught my attention. "Retaliation?" I repeated, sitting up. "Retaliation for what? I haven't done anything illegal, Natalie. Can Ryan say the same?" Her breath hitched, and I knew I'd struck a nerve. "Jason, please," she said, her voice cracking. "I just want this to stop." For a moment, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then I remembered the smug looks, the condescending comments, the months of sabotage. This wasn't my mess to clean up. "Natalie," I said, my voice firm. "This stopped being my problem the moment you and Ryan decided to make me your target. If he wants to involve lawyers, let him. I've got nothing to hide. Can he say the same?" She didn't respond, and after a few seconds, I ended the call. Whatever fallout Ryan and Natalie were dealing with, they'd brought it on themselves. Later that day, Alex called with another update. "It's worse than we thought," he said, sounding almost impressed. "Ryan's LLC is hemorrhaging money. The backers who haven't pulled out completely are demanding audits, and it looks like there are some discrepancies." "Discrepancies?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. Nothing concrete yet, but enough to raise red flags. If those audits turn anything up, Ryan could be looking at serious legal trouble. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of his words sink in. Ryan wasn't just losing his reputation. He was on the verge of losing everything. "Keep me posted," I said. "I have a feeling this is far from over." Over the next few days, the fallout continued. Ryan's LLC was effectively dead in the water, and Natalie's attempts to smooth things over only made matters worse. At one point, I heard through the grapevine that she tried to set up a meeting with one of Ryan's former backers, only to be turned away at the door. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get more chaotic, I received an unexpected email. It was from Ryan. The subject line was simple: "Let's talk." I stared at the screen for a long time, debating whether to open it. Eventually, curiosity won out. The message was short and to the point. "Jason, I think we've both made mistakes. Let's sit down and work this out like adults. Name the time and place." Mistakes. That was rich. I debated ignoring it, but something told me this was an opportunity one couldn't pass up. Ryan had been cornered, and now he wanted to talk. Fine, I'd let him talk. But this time, I'd be the one calling the shots. When I agreed to meet Ryan, I made sure it was on my terms. A neutral location, no lawyers, no Natalie. Just the two of us, face to face. If he thought he could bluff his way out of this, he was about to learn just how much the tables had turned. We met at a quiet restaurant downtown, one I'd picked specifically because it didn't suit Ryan's usual flair for drama. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting stiffly in a corner booth. He looked different. His usually confident posture slouched, his suit wrinkled in a way that screamed desperation. The man who once walked into every room as though he owned it now seemed like a shadow of himself. "Jason," he said as I approached, standing to shake my hand. His grip was weak. I didn't bother pretending to smile. "Ryan," I replied, sliding into the seat across from him. "Let's get to it." He cleared his throat, obviously thrown by my directness. "Look, I think we both know this situation has gotten out of hand. Mistakes were made, on both sides, and I think it's time we de-escalate." I raised an eyebrow. "De-escalate? You mean after you spent months trying to sabotage my business? After you dragged my name through the mud and tried to turn my clients against me? Now you want to de-escalate?" He flinched but recovered quickly. "Jason, come on. You've made your point. The investors have pulled out, my backers are gone, and my LLC is dead in the water. I get it. You've won." There it was, the admission I'd been waiting for. "This isn't about winning, Ryan," I said, my tone cold. "This is about accountability. You didn't just come after me. You came after my livelihood, my family. You thought you could ruin me, and now you're asking for a truce? You're lucky I haven't taken this to court." His jaw tightened, and for a moment, the old Ryan resurfaced, the arrogant, conniving man who thought he could outsmart anyone. But it was fleeting. He knew he didn't have the upper hand anymore. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice strained. "I want you to own up to what you've done," I said. "Publicly. Admit to the lies, the sabotage, all of it. I want a written statement sent to every client, every backer, and every partner you've misled. And I want you to stay out of my business. Permanently." Ryan's face darkened, but he nodded slowly. "Fine. And one more thing," I added, leaning forward. "If you ever try to come after me again, personally or professionally, I won't just defend myself. I'll bury you." He didn't respond, just stared at me with a mix of resentment and defeat. Eventually, he nodded again. "You'll have your statement by the end of the week." "Good," I said, standing. "Then we're done here." I didn't wait for a goodbye. The fallout from Ryan's confession was swift and brutal. Once his statement went public, his remaining credibility vanished. His former backers distanced themselves completely, and word spread quickly through our industry. Natalie, who had spent years building her image as the perfect wife and business partner, suddenly found herself alone in a sinking ship. For me, it wasn't just a victory, it was closure. After years of enduring their games and manipulation, I was finally free. Free to focus on my kids, my business, and the life I'd worked so hard to rebuild. Logan and Ava were the ones who noticed the change first. They didn't fully understand what had happened, but they could sense the difference in me. The tension I'd carried for so long was gone, replaced by a calm certainty that things were finally as they should be. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Ava looked up at me and asked, "Daddy, why are you smiling so much these days?" I laughed, ruffling her hair. "Because things are finally good, sweetheart, and they're only going to get better." Dean, sitting across from me, raised his glass in a silent toast. His unwavering support had been my anchor through all of this, and I couldn't have done it without him. He smiled at me, his eyes filled with pride. "You did it, Jason. You took back your life." "Not just mine," I said, glancing at Logan and Ava. "Ours." In the days that followed, life began to settle into a new normal. My business thrived, my relationship strengthened, and the shadow of Ryan and Natalie slowly faded into the background. They'd underestimated me, but more importantly, they'd underestimated what I was fighting for. My family, my integrity, my future. On a quiet Saturday afternoon, as I watched Logan and Ava play in the backyard, I realized something profound. Winning wasn't just about defeating them. It was about reclaiming my peace, my purpose, and my pride. And I had done exactly that.